Welcome to another episode of the Snakes Are Us TV podcast presented by Southeastern Reptile Rescue and its founder and director, me, Jason Clark.
Are you ready?
Well, we made it to episode number 5 of the Snakes Are Us TV podcast. My name is Jason Clark, and started not to even do this one tonight because I don't know if you can hear. I don't know if this mic is picking it up, but there's a door right over my shoulder, and if I open that door right now, she's out there making all kinds of noise, and I don't know if you can hear it, but I was like, maybe it's too noisy. She's being too loud. The podcast, and she will not be quiet. Her name is Helene, Hurricane Helene to be exact, and she is upon us right now. So I'm in central Georgia. I am not on the coast of Florida, thank the Lord at the moment, and God bless the people that are there, that are in the path of that. As we speak right now, it is making its way across Florida, and the rain is up here. We don't have a lot of wind right here yet, but it's, did you just hear that? Okay, so I went back and I listened to some of my podcasts, and several times I have sucked my teeth. I don't know why I do that. It annoys me. So if it annoys you, we're in the same boat, okay? It annoys me as bad as it annoys you. I'm trying not to do it, and I know I do it, and so I'm trying to recognize that I do it, so I won't do it. Anyway, hopefully you don't notice it as bad as I notice. Anyway, so tonight we're going to talk about laws involving reptiles. I thought this would be a really good subject to cover, but now on episode 4, I said in episode 4 that, don't get used to me bringing animals on the podcast because, some people don't watch this live on YouTube. Some people listen to it, Spotify and Apple, Play Music or wherever they listen to podcasts, and so not everybody is seeing what's happening as I'm doing this. So I don't intend on bringing animals on here a lot, but like I said last week, unless I have something that's just adorable that I just have to show you, and that's what I had last week. Last week we had for episode 4 was a dwarf caiman that somebody had illegally, and I was like, you can't get anything cuter than that. But you can, okay? And I brought something tonight. I'm like, oh, man, 2 episodes in a row, something really, really cute. And I've got more than one animal tonight. I don't know if I'm going to show them all because one of them can definitely kill me. But this first one right here cannot kill me. One day it will be able to kill me. But right now it is too small to do that. So let me get this thing out. And I just want to show it to you. And if you're listening and not watching, I apologize, but I have to show this. It is too cute. This was just dropped off. Hatchling American alligators. Look at this. That is absolutely adorable. I've got 2 of them in my hands. Now, I don't just have 2 of these. I have more than 2 of these that were dropped off just a few days ago. How many do I have? I have 21 of these. 21 hatchling American alligators dropped off, and they are adorable. I understand why people would want these little guys as pets. They're so cute. Someone, I don't know, got these illegally out of an alligator's nest and got caught with them. You can't have these. You can't be raiding alligator's nest. And so the gators, it was an option. Did you euthanize them or to turn them over to us and see if we can find homes for them? I'm not going to keep 21 gators. I'm going to keep a few of them because we are going to raise some new gators and use these for programs. Several of them already have homes to go to. So it's going pretty good with finding all these guys' homes. But 21 American alligators have come in, and they are eating quite well. They are these things are so cute. I mean, this is a hatchling. Look at that little thing. That is a hatchling. And I fed them their first meal just a couple days ago. And I videoed it, and it's going to be a pretty good YouTube video. We're going to put that video out and tell you all about juvenile American alligators, and you get to see these guys actually eat their first meal. They are absolutely adorable, and I'm going to put them back in their box. I had to show these, like I said, because they are so cute. At this stage, they don't even try to bite. And if they did, it really wouldn't hurt that bad. Their teeth are pretty sharp when they're small because they don't have as much jaw pressure. Their teeth are not sharp when they're older because they do have a lot of jaw pressure, basically. But a bite from these guys would not really hurt. But they, not one of these things have even attempted to bite. But that will change as they grow. It will change very quick. I do have one more animal to show you, and I may show it to you, but we're not going to do it yet because we're going to talk about this animal with what the podcast is about tonight. Let me put these gators up. All right, so I thought it would be good to talk about laws in reference to reptiles. This is a question I get all the time. People call me, people email me, people see me at shows and say, hey, can you explain this to me? And I have to admit, it can actually be quite confusing to understand the laws that goes with reptiles. And mainly that's because laws are usually set state by state. So the law in Georgia does not match the law in Florida, which doesn't match Alabama, which doesn't match South Carolina or North Carolina or Tennessee or Mississippi, Missouri, Louisiana. Pick your state, okay? Pretty much, they're all different. Some of them are similar. They may have some similarities, but they're all very different. What that means is a snake that I have as a pet in Georgia, you may not be able to have as a pet where you live. And something you have where you live, we may not be able to have here. And it's very confusing. So let me see if I can confuse you a lot with explaining this, because the way I explain this is going to sound crazy, okay? But just listen. So I live in Georgia. Here in Georgia, the way the law is written, and I'm going to try to get over here to the chat. If you see me looking over here, I'm trying to go in here and find the chat. If you're watching this live, we record this live on YouTube. If you're watching this live on YouTube, SnakesAreUsTV, if you go into the live chat feature, you can post your questions. You can talk to me here live in just a minute. And I want to pull this up. So here in Georgia, as far as our snakes, we have venomous snakes, we have non-venomous snakes. Now, I'm not getting into alligators and turtles and lizards, and we may mention some of that, but this is it's about snakes, so we're going to mainly talk about snakes, okay? Years ago, lawmakers or somebody wanted to protect snakes in Georgia, okay? And sometimes when you're trying to pass a law, you have to make concessions, and you may not be able to get the law passed that you want to get passed, so you kind of have to get the law passed that you can get passed, all right? And they knew that they would not be able to pass a law prohibiting people from killing any snake in Georgia because so many people enjoy killing venomous snakes, unfortunately. A lot of people think they're almost doing a misservice. They're doing something wrong if they see a venomous snake and they don't kill it. Lack of education there. So they wrote a law and said, well, we're not going to be able to get it passed to protect all snakes in Georgia because we can't get people to agree not to kill copperheads. But we really need to protect the non-venomous ones at least because they're so good to have around. The venomous ones are just as good to have around. They're just misunderstood because they can be dangerous when we do dumb things. But so the way they did it is they wrote a law and said, okay, if the snake is native to Georgia and it's non-venomous, it's protected. You can't kill them. You can't catch them without a permit. You can't keep them in captivity without a license. And they just made a lot of rules around it to protect these snakes. So that way people are not killing king snakes and corn snakes and rat snakes or collecting these snakes to sell in the pet trade, which will also make the numbers go down. That's kind of what their hope was. And they got the law passed. And so as of today, you cannot own native non-venomous snakes that live in Georgia. You cannot kill them. As a matter of fact, there's a law and I'm going to read this to you, tell you what it says. And this is where I read it. So here in Georgia, the Georgia Department of Natural Resources put together this really awesome brochure called Venomous Snakes of Georgia. It doesn't just have Georgia's venomous snakes. It actually has all of Georgia's snakes, even the non-venomous snakes that live here. And if you open this brochure all the way up, it has all of our venomous snakes and shows us county by county all throughout our state of Georgia here, which snakes live where in which counties, where their ranges are. But if I flip this over, right over here on the back, it talks about the legalities regarding Georgia's non-venomous snakes. This is what it says. In Georgia, it is illegal, a misdemeanor, punishable by up to a $1,000 fine and a year in jail, to possess or kill many of the state's non-game wildlife species. So it's not just snakes, including non-venomous snakes. I just did it again. I'm trying not to suck my teeth because it annoys me. I know it's annoying you. And I'm going to stop saying something about it. I want you to know that I'm aware of it. Okay? Nobody said anything about it except for me. But, okay, let's get back on track. It is also illegal to disturb or destroy the dens, holes, or homes of wildlife. You can't use explosives. You can't use chemicals or other devices to drive wildlife, including venomous snakes, from their homes. Now, Official Code of Georgia, OCGA 27-1-28, is what talks about killing killing non-venomous snakes native to Georgia. And then as far as removing snakes from their home, you know, I think why this law was written is because years ago we had the rattlesnake roundups, which they would go out and they would pull rattlesnakes from the burrows of gopher tortoises. This was sometimes done with a treble hook on the end of a garden hose. They'd shove this hose down and they would listen to see if they could hear a rattlesnake rattle, and they disturbed it with the hose. And if they did, they would kind of snag that rattlesnake with that treble hook and pull him out of the den. If that doesn't work, they would also pour a little bit of gas down the hose, and the fumes as they went down into the burrow would make the snake want to come out. It also could render the burrow uninhabitable, could kill the gopher tortoise. A lot of really bad things that this would do. And so this kind of makes it illegal to be able to pull an eastern diamondback rattlesnake from a gopher tortoise burrow. But it also protects venomous snakes from having their homes destroyed intentionally, to kill the snakes or whatever. So Georgia snakes do have some protections. I wish that you couldn't go and kill copperheads and all these things, because people just do that. They just don't understand why they should not be killing these snakes. So with those laws in place, how do I go about owning the snakes that I have? Well, there are several laws that require us to have permits, and there's several different permits we have to get. And the state of Georgia has a what's called a special permit unit, and some wonderful people run it. They work very hard, and they really know their stuff. They do a really good job here in Georgia with the permit system. I think they have it down to a science pretty well. And one license is for possessing native wildlife. Okay, so in Georgia, they classify animals as two ways. It's either considered wildlife or a wild animal. Okay, so in Georgia, wild animals are not considered wildlife. Wildlife is not a wild animal. What I mean by that is wildlife, when we say wildlife, that means it's native to Georgia. When we say wild animal, we know we're talking about animals that are not native to Georgia. So, something from, Texas that doesn't live in Georgia, okay? Or Africa that doesn't live in Georgia. Those would be wild animals. So one license that I have allows me to possess native wildlife. So that would allow me to have eastern king snakes and corn snakes, American alligators like you just saw, all right? And with that permit, I can't just go out and get any animal I want. I have to get pre-approval from the state, and each animal has to come from a legal source. So I can't just go out in my yard now that I have the permit and pick up an eastern king snake, say, well, I got a permit for it. Here's my eastern king snake. I'm going to go teach kids with them. You can't do that. So it has to come from a legal place. And those places can be a snake that's non-releasable. Maybe someone's got one illegal. The state takes it and they can't relocate it, so it can go to an educator. A lot of different ways that you can get one of those snakes if you have a license. So that's for wildlife. Another license is for wild animals, animals that are not native to Georgia. And there's a lot more restrictions on that. It's a lot harder to get that license. And that will allow you to have, pending approval. You can't just get the wild animal license, get whatever animal you want. You have to get the license and then get approved for each species of animal that's added to it, okay? But that would include cobras, elephants, okay? Yeah, elephants. That includes animals that do not naturally live in Georgia. So last week on episode 4, I showed you a caiman. So I possess that caiman with my license that allows me to have wild animals. I possess the alligators with a different license that allows me to have wildlife. Now, with those licenses, there are restrictions, okay? And you see why this is so confusing. So when I have my license to have wildlife, which is animals native to Georgia, that license permits me to use them for education only. And I have to write an educational plan. Here's the animal I want. Here's what I'm going to teach and tell the public about this animal. Here's my lesson plan, basically. And once that's approved, then I can have the animal. And that's all I can use it for, is just education purposes at these events that I do, okay? That's it. Now, the film industry came to Georgia because they offered all these tax incentives. And so all these major movies and TV shows and commercials and everything you can imagine was filming right here. And there's, film studios being built here and there, and it's just insane. Everywhere you go, you're driving by, you're in your hometown. Oh, they're filming over here today. They're filming a movie in my hometown. So with that came the need for animals to be in film, because, you watch a movie and you don't even think about it. You see a dog walk by in the background. Well, somebody brought that dog and had to get paid to bring that dog to be in that movie, even no matter how small this little scene is. And so if they want an animal in it that is native to Georgia to just appear in a movie, well, that's not considered educational. So you can't do it. If somebody wants an alligator in a TV show, can't do it. You can't film it here in Georgia. Maybe you can film it in some other state if it's legal there, but you can't do it here in Georgia because the people who have the alligators can only use those for education and not for entertainment purposes in this movie or TV show. Well, we want to be able to use that, and the state of Georgia recognized that. So the state of Georgia, what they did is they offered a way around that. They offered another permit, a film license, another license that we can get, that we can now use that to use animals that are native to Georgia in film. And some of you are probably thinking, it's just another way for the government to grab money or this, that. Maybe so. I don't know. But I do like these animals are protected and that we can't just do whatever we want to do with them. So I think there's some good with it. There's some bad with it. The bad part is I don't like paying the money that I have to pay for all these permits. It's expensive, okay? I don't like that. I don't like the paperwork that goes with it. I'm horrible at doing paperwork. Just ask Jamie, works for DNR, and has to deal with me. She understands how I am with dealing with paperwork. I'm horrible at it. So there's good and bad to both of it. But it does help protect the animals. So there's when we in the episode we talked about film. I think I may have talked about Seminole, my American Alligator. I've had him for 18 or 19 years, and he was in a TV show called Atlanta, and he had to walk out of a front door, down a sidewalk, and into the bushes, and that was not any educational content, but we were able to use him because of the licensing that allows us to also use these animals for film. So we've used several non-venomous snakes, several venomous snakes, several turtles in films that are native to Georgia. We've done several of those things. And so that's what that license allows us to have. Now, there's even more licenses, okay? So what if somebody says, okay, well, you know, I've got a rat snake in my chicken coop and it's eating my chicken eggs and I want the snake removed. In Georgia, to legally do that, you have to have a license, even if it's on your property, okay? You're like, well, it's my property. Yeah, you own the land, but you don't own the wildlife that comes through it. Georgia owns that. The same as if a bald eagle lands on your back porch, that's not your eagle now, okay? So you don't have a pet eagle because one's in your yard. You can't just do what you want to do with it, all right? So in order for me to get, like you watch my YouTube channel, you see me going removing these snakes. In order for me to go do that, I have to have a license. And that license, there's certain restrictions to that license. So I can go and remove, with this one license, I can, you know, exclude bats from attics. I can remove raccoons, and I can trap beaver. I can trap and relocate alligators as long as those alligators are under 4 foot long. If it's 1 inch over 4 foot, this license does not cover that. That's a different license. We'll get to that in a minute. So this license allows me to catch native, non-venomous snakes, and they're protected so we can't kill them. So when I go and catch a rat snake out of somebody's chicken coop, I'm utilizing my license, one of my licenses to do that. Now, the restrictions of that license is if I catch that rat snake out of a chicken coop, I hope I don't mess this up. I mean, you see how confusing. I've done this these licenses for so long. I think I know them all. I think I know all the right answers, but it's confusing. But so hopefully I don't give you wrong information here, but I think, unless they've changed it, when I catch a rat snake, I have to release it into suitable habitat, but I think I've got 72 hours to do that. I've got to release it within 72 hours. During that time, I cannot take it to my kid's school to do an educational program because even though I have a license to use rat snakes for education, well, I have this rat snake for education that came in legally. This rat snake came in with this other license to remove nuisance animals, so I can just hold them. Maybe there's a problem with the weather or something else, and I just can't release him right now. That's why I can hold it for 72 hours, but I have to release him nearby, not far from where he's caught, into suitable habitat, okay? And then, like I said, I can also catch and relocate, not catch and kill, but only catch and relocate alligators that are under 4 foot long, as long as they're not nuisance gators that are, you know, attacking somebody or something. So that's another license. Another license that I have regarding alligators is I am an alligator agent. So I have the permit that allows me to possess native wildlife, which includes alligators, and use them for education. Then I have a license that allows me to film with alligators in Georgia that may or may not be educational. So that's two. Then the third one that covers alligators is the alligator agent, okay? Now, I don't know how many alligator agents are in Georgia. A dozen, 15, somewhere like that maybe. And that's about it. And so basically the alligator agents, they assign each agent a territory, a certain area in Georgia, and says, this is your area. This is where you can trap alligators, okay? And the alligators that we trap with that license are over 4 foot long. So for instance, if you call me and say, hey, Jason, I have an alligator in my pond and I don't want it here. Can you come and catch it? Well, my first question is, how big is the gator? If you tell me the gator is under 4 foot, then that means I, with my license, can trap and relocate that gator no matter which county in Georgia is located. So it's South Georgia, North Georgia, Central Georgia. I can go and legally catch the gator and relocate him. I can also charge the property owner for my services to do that, okay? Now, when it comes to an alligator over 4 foot, is this confusing yet? Yeah, okay. When it comes to gators that are over 4 feet, if you call me and say, Jason, I got a gator in my pond, my first question is, how big is he? When you tell me he's 5 foot or 10 foot or 12 foot, I'm like, okay, that's fine. My next question is, where do you live? What county are you in? Because I have to check to make sure that you are in one of my counties, okay? If you're in one of my counties, no problem. But we also have to, bring in the state and make sure they understand, hey, is it okay? I know I have this license to do this, but just to let y'all know, double checking, we have this gator, here's the location, we good to go remove it, and then of course, yes, go remove the gator. So when I go out to remove this gator that's over 4 foot, because it's a different license, it's a contract with the state, we don't charge for it. There's no fee for this to the property owner, and we can't charge them. So I don't make any money removing those gators. The only way I can make money removing this gator is if I kill the gator and I maybe sell the meat, sell the hide, okay? I don't kill alligators. I love alligators. Now, with that said, this is a reptile rescue, but also understand I'm not opposed to someone legally killing an alligator and eating it, all right? As long as it's done legally, you have a license. I'm not opposed to that. I don't go do it, but I'm not going to fuss at anybody else for doing it. I don't have a problem with that. Now, when I get there to catch this big 5 foot, 10 foot alligator, whatever it is, I have to make a determination, is this gator showing any type of behavior that would make me believe that it may attack somebody, okay? And I can judge that by the gator, his behavior, and how he responds to me when I see him and when he sees me. If the gator is going away, if he's really scared and he's skittish of people, he's probably okay to relocate. If the gator sees me, he swims closer and closer because he thinks I'm going to feed him because somebody's been feeding him. Probably not a gator we can relocate. In that case, because somebody decided to feed this alligator, now it has to be euthanized. That's why it's illegal to feed alligators that are out there, because you're giving them a death sentence. They lose their fear of people, they approach people, and then you end up having an alligator attack. So most of the time, I can catch the gator and relocate him. And, like I said, because we can't charge for that, because I'm not killing him, because we're not selling the hide of the skin of the gator, we don't get any revenue for that, but that's fine. I enjoy catching the gator and getting him back somewhere that's safe, and, I enjoy doing that. Then there's another license. Another one is called a scientific collecting permit, which allows scientists for specific reasons in specific areas of the state, specific times of the year, to collect specific species and for scientific research and different things that they may be approved for. And I have that license, which allows me to do certain things with native non-venomous snakes that are not threatened or endangered species. So a lot of licenses that we have that allow us to do a lot of different stuff with some of these animals, okay? Now, that brings me to the other animal that I brought with me to show you. I don't know how this is going to go, okay? I think I've got 2 hooks in here. This is a venomous snake. I'm going to bring out a venomous snake. And this is not a venomous snake that's native to Georgia. This is one that's not from here. So if it's not native to Georgia, what would it be called? Wildlife or a wild animal? Which one? Yep. Okay. So this is going to be a wild animal. This is not wildlife. Let me grab my other hook, and just in case I need 2 hooks. Now this is a snake. It is a venomous snake. It is pretty small. Because I don't have a whole lot of room here to work with this thing, I'm just going to sit him. Actually, I'm probably going to hook him here and kind of just hold him up in front of the camera so you can see him for just a minute. I'm not going to keep this thing out long because he's not going to like being hooked. And I'm not going to keep this thing out long. I just want to show this to you just because it's a cool snake, okay? So this little snake is a snake. So before I get them out, I was trying so hard to get a video edited to air tonight on YouTube before this podcast aired, because I wanted you guys to watch this video first. But I will be able to finish this video tonight, and so tomorrow I will have this video up on YouTube. I don't know what it's going to be called yet, but it does involve several venomous snakes and several exotic venomous snakes where someone was bitten by a cobra, okay, bitten by a cobra, and we had to get the cobra plus several more. But let me get this little fella up. He does not like sitting on the hook. It's okay, buddy. This, if you can see him, is, let me get my other hook over here. Hang on one second. Let me reposition this guy because I don't want to get too close to him. That hook there is a little small. And if you're not watching this podcast, if you're listening to it, I apologize, but I have to show this. This is the Gaboon viper. That right there, and this is actually a West African Gaboon viper. Someone had this snake illegally as a pet, and because this is considered wildlife. Now, some wildlife you can own without a license. Some wildlife, no, I'm sorry, hang on one second. I'm getting my terms confused. It's confusing. So wildlife is native to Georgia. Wild animals are not. They are exotic and do not live here naturally. So this Gaboon viper is considered to be a wild animal, okay? Somebody had this wild animal, this West African Gaboon viper, as a pet. That's illegal. There are some animals considered to be wild animals, not native to Georgia, that you can legally have as a pet and not have a license. For instance, what would one of those be? A red-tailed boa constrictor, a ball python. A ball python is considered a wild animal, and they're not native to Georgia, but there's no license required for you to have it. An anaconda is a wild animal, and you can own that here in Georgia. So there's lots of reptiles you can own that are considered to be wild animals that don't require a license. But this Gaboon viper definitely requires a license. Let me move my mic back just a little bit so I'm not leaning in to talk in the mic while I'm holding a Gaboon right here. Now, this is a small Gaboon. This is a young Gaboon viper. And it's, yeah, like all Gaboon vipers, it is very pretty. It is a very chunky little snake. And it is a very deadly little snake. If you don't know much about Gaboon vipers, these snakes are known to have the largest fangs of any snake in the world. As an adult, the snake may have fangs that reach up to about 2 inches in length, and they have massive venom glands, and they can inject an enormous amount of venom. Not a snake you want to get bit by. They have a very impressive strike range. Fortunately, they're pretty laid-back snakes, and don't act too crazy, thankfully. But I'm not going to keep him on this hook long. This is not very comfortable for this snake. So we're going to get ready to put him up here in just a second. But I just want to show you this Gaboon viper and give you an example of an animal that is considered to be a wild animal that you cannot legally have in Georgia without a license, okay? That would be this fella. Now, the video that I'm going to be putting out tomorrow in regards to the person bitten by the cobra, this Gaboon viper will appear in that video. So I just thought that was pretty cool. I wanted so bad to have that out for you guys before this podcast came out, but Hurricane Helene had other plans for me. We had to have our other animals taken care of and other things taken care of around here first. So we're going to put our little Gaboon up. Back in the box here, we're going to go to our comments, see what anybody's commenting on there. This guy is so cool. Come on over here, fella. Stay on the hook for me and nicely go back into your box. Thank you very much for not trying to kill me. All right, great. Now let me lock this up just so he can't push the lid open. Okay, so the Gaboon's put away. All right, so that is a wild animal that requires a license. A California king snake. We have king snakes in Georgia that are wildlife. And the king snakes we have here, like the eastern king snake, the mole king snake, the black king snake, the scarlet king snake, those require a wildlife license, okay? A California king snake, which is obviously not native to Georgia, does not require that. It's a wild animal, but it doesn't require a wild animal license. You can own a California king snake in Georgia with no license. So it gets very confusing. Now, Burmese pythons, people call them the Britney Spears snake I hear all the time, or they'll call it the banana snake. The big yellow and white snakes, the Burmese pythons that you hear about living in the Florida Everglades, okay? I've owned many Burmese pythons over the years. I love Burmese pythons. They were just banned here in Georgia recently. Now, how do I feel about that? Well, I don't feel good about it. I don't like that they're banned in Georgia. I wish they weren't. I wish I could have one with no license. But I understand why they were banned. Here's what I've been told. Daniel is the state herpetologist here in Georgia. He's a friend of mine, and eventually we're going to have 2 microphones out in here. We're going to have Daniel on the podcast to talk about a lot of different stuff. We've already been talking about some ideas that we're going to have him on here for, and you'll love Daniel. He's a really great guy, but he works for the state as a state herpetologist, and I was talking with him, and this is basically how he explained it to me, was these the Burmese pythons that are living in the Everglades, that are, killing native wildlife or trying to get rid of the Burmese pythons in Florida. A lot of people are worried about those taking over and living here in Georgia in the wild. I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's anything we're going to have to worry about. We catch Burmese pythons here in Georgia, but not because they're living here, not because they're migrating up from Florida. They're not doing that. The ones we catch here in Georgia were released recently here in Georgia, and then shortly after they're released, we get a call and we go catch it. Okay, so that happens, and there's YouTube videos on my channel of us catching Burmese pythons here in Georgia. So that's not the problem I'm talking about. The problem is that there is a parasite that some of these Burmese pythons in South Florida possess that is pretty common among those Burmese pythons, and it is basically a lungworm. And the native snakes cannot handle that as well as the Burmese pythons can. So when that lungworm is transferred to native species of South Florida, it wipes them out pretty quick, whereas a Burmese python, it can kill that snake as well, but the Burmese python handles it better than the native snakes do. And there's already been one native snake of Florida, which is just on the Florida border with Georgia, right there at the Georgia line, that's been found to have this lungworm. Is this lungworm already in Georgia, in some of Georgia's snakes? I don't know. I hope not. But if somebody goes down to Florida, catches a Burmese python, which personally I've done, okay, what we don't want is for that person to say, I'm going to bring this one back as a pet, because if it has that lungworm, that could be passed on to the native populations here in Georgia. And our job as citizens of Georgia is to protect our wildlife here. As much as I love Burmese pythons, as much as I wish Burmese pythons were not banned, I like to be able to own Burmese pythons. I would like for you to be able to own Burmese pythons if you're qualified and if you keep it correctly, right? Okay. I'm all for less government, and, because it seems like as soon as one law is made, we're going to make 10 more laws off of that one. I don't like all that, and I wish that would go away, but some of it's necessary to protect wildlife. And so even though I don't like that Burmese pythons are banned, I understand why they are. All right, let's go to the comment section right here real quick. As I'm doing this, man, there's a lot of comments in here. Oh, my goodness. So I'm going to go through, read all these. I'm going to skim through some of these. I just mentioned Florida. So my licenses in Florida are very different than Georgia. In Florida, I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I really hope I'm not getting this wrong. In Florida, I think you can go and catch a corn snake, a Florida king snake, snakes that are native to Florida that are non-venomous. I think you can catch those without a permit. I think you can even keep them without a permit, I think. Like I said, it's very confusing. But the venomous snakes in Florida, not that they're protected, but they're restricted. So you can't legally go out and be catching venomous snakes in Florida or keep any venomous snake in Florida, whether it's native to Florida or an exotic species, without a venomous reptiles license, which I have. And to do that, you have to be able to show, at least 1,000 hours of working experience, hands-on experience with each class of venomous snake you're going to keep. Whether that's alligators, whether it's, pit vipers or elapids or whatever it is, 1,000 hours for each one of those. And so that's a little bit tougher permit to get depending on how you look at it. So I've got that one. But then, when I go to Alabama, there's certain snakes that are protected there. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake, for instance, is protected in Alabama, but it's not protected in Georgia. So for me to go to Alabama and do an educational program, I have to contact Alabama, I have to contact Georgia, and I have to make sure I have the proper permits that allow me to not only use these animals in Alabama for education, but it allows me to cross state lines with these animals. So I can't just be crossing over state lines with my Georgia animals unless Georgia gives me permission to take those out of the state of Georgia. So when I go to, I've done snake shows in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Kansas, in Ohio, in Kentucky, and Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Missouri, Mississippi. I've done programs in all these states, and every single time I go to a state, I have to figure out what their requirements are. Do they observe my Georgia licenses, and is that good enough? Or do I need to figure out what, when I go to South Carolina, I can pretty much take I can take native venomous, native non-venomous, but I have to get a permit to bring my alligator into South Carolina, which is not hard to do because I'm licensed in Georgia, but it's just one more thing you have to be aware of so I'm not breaking laws as I'm crossing over state lines and going all over teaching about reptiles, okay? So it gets very, very confusing. So Painted Rocks is in the comment section. Hello, we got Chris Taylor, Connor Taylor. A lot of you guys are in here. So Painted Rocks says, do the reptiles act strangely with all the bad weather coming? Strange? I don't know if I'd say they act strange. I think that it's a good time to find snakes. So when right before the storm comes, that barometric pressure drops. For some reason, snakes are active and moving around. So driving around some roads looking for snakes, that's a good time to do it. Also, with all the rain that we're having from this hurricane that's on top of us right now, that may make snakes want to go to higher ground, which could be trying to come inside your house. So this time of year, we do have an increase in the number of snake calls that we get for removals of snakes out of houses. Let's see what else we got here. We got somebody called the Bandit. Hello, Bandit. Thank you for coming. Cheesy Cheetah watching from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have never been to Milwaukee. I've done shows in Wisconsin, though. Nature Nut is back in here. He's always in here with us. Hello, Nature Nut. I think Nature Nut is, from South Carolina. Lori Folk. I've seen Lori on here many, many times. Thanks to Hurricane Helena, I am here, so I'm assuming Lori, her work schedule got canceled, so she's able to join us here in the chat tonight on our podcast. Austin Massey, Living with Cable, that is my friend Chris. And he says, dang, I'm late. Yes, Chris, do better. Next time, do not be late at my podcast again. Hello, Greg's Turtle Haven. If you're not familiar with Greg's Turtle Haven, go to YouTube to Greg's Turtle Haven. It is an awesome YouTube channel, especially if you're into turtles. If you're not into turtles, go watch it and get into turtles. The video I'm going to be putting out, I either have it out tonight. I'll put it out tomorrow after this podcast come out. We'll put it out tomorrow. Now, in the video, a couple of things I do want to mention when you watch this. I don't know what it's going to be called. But the video is about a guy who has a pet cobra and gets bit by the pet cobra. I don't want to give everything away. When I filmed this video, I did not film the video specifically to be a YouTube video. I filmed it because I'm in a guy's house removing his snakes, and I just want to document this. But I also knew I would probably be using this for a video, okay? And so while I'm in there, I'm not going to tell you all the snakes we got, but we removed several snakes. There was a cobra, the Gaboon viper I just showed you, and there was also a green mamba, Yes, a green mamba, not a black mamba. There's a few mambas. There's green mambas. There's Jameson's mambas. There's black mambas. There's, so there's a few different mambas out there, and they're all deadly. They're all fast. They all would definitely bite me given the chance. They are not fun to work with. I don't like dealing with mambas. They are pretty. They need to stay in Africa, and I can just watch them from afar. But I've dealt with mambas, and I don't keep any mambas, but we did have to get one. And so I think the conversation was pretty funny because the guy who got bit by the cobra, while we're in his house removing his snakes, at his request, I should say, we weren't taking his snakes by force, he wanted to turn the snakes over to me. So we went to his house to go in to remove all these venomous snakes. And he had several non-venomous. He was going to be keeping those, but the venomous ones were all going. And some of these containers are aquariums, glass containers with screen lids, and I don't want to put that in my snake van and transport that several hours, because this was not in Georgia. This was actually in a different state, which I'm not going to mention where it was. But I don't want to be, driving with aquariums with a mamba in it or a Gaboon viper. You get in a wreck, the aquarium breaks, and where are all the snakes? They're all loose in my van. Okay, so that would not be a good thing. So I decided to bag each snake into a pillowcase, tie the pillowcase up, and then put the pillowcase into a separate box and latch the lid, and then label the box with what was inside, okay? Well, we did that with all these snakes, and the last one of the day to be boxed up was going to be the green mamba. And we're in this bedroom, and you'll see in the video, there's a lot of stuff in the bedroom. The brother of the snake bite victim is there, letting us in the house, showing us where the snakes are so we can collect them all. And he gets the snake bite victim on the phone, and he says, look, I don't want you unboxing, because it was in this little plastic box with tape on it. I don't know why it wasn't in a cage or something. It was just in a box. He said, just take the box. Well, I don't want this box to fall apart. Or it's just plastic and thin, clear plastic. I want to take him out of this box and bag him, and then put him in one of my much more sturdy boxes. So I know it's secure, not going to get loose on my 5 or 6, 7 hour drive, and I have to drive home. And he says, look, I don't want you unboxing that mamba in my bedroom. If it gets loose in the bedroom, that's going to be a problem. I would rather you take that mamba out in the front yard and unbox him out there. So law enforcement is there with me, and I just turned to them. I said, look, guys, I will do whatever y'all say, but just let me say this. If I unbox this mamba in the bedroom, there's a lot of stuff in here. And if he gets loose, he's going to be hard to find, but I can probably find him, okay? I said, if we go out in the front yard and I'm unboxing him and he gets loose in the front yard, well, mambas are fast. So we can just tell the news media when they show up, he went that way. Which one do y'all want to do? And they very quickly said, do it in the house. So we actually moved from the bedroom to the living room where there's a little bit more floor space, so I had more room to work to get the mamba out of the container and get him into the pillowcase tied up into our box. So we'll show you that tomorrow. It actually went pretty well. But I just thought that was that little conversation there was kind of funny. So Nature Nut says, sounds like a lot of licensing. Yes, it is a lot of licensing. It is not fun to keep up with. You don't want to forget to get a license and go somewhere, then you have your animal confiscated. There was one time I went to Pennsylvania to do an event for the NRA in Pennsylvania. And while I was there, I got permission from Pennsylvania to be there to bring my animals in. And I was there for 10 or 11 days. While I was there, the state of Pennsylvania contacted me and said, hey, can we put you in contact with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service while you're here in Pennsylvania about some other snakes? I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just there doing, talks. I'm speaking, doing public speaking about snakes. So they had this agent call me and say, hey, listen, we're here in Pennsylvania too, and we just went to a guy's house and we confiscated 2 copperheads. And here in Pennsylvania, he cannot own these copperheads. This is illegal for him, so we've seized these for some reason. And you're here, you're going to be going back to Georgia. How about we just bring these to you and you can keep them with you while you're here in Pennsylvania. And then when you go to Georgia, take them with you. So, sometimes that happens. I don't know. I don't really understand the laws in Pennsylvania. I don't live there. I don't know what all those laws are and how it works. I just know when I go there, how I get my permit, what I have to do to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to be legal there. So we got Dennis Buckley says, hi guys, I'm Dennis from Central Wisconsin. Isn't that how you say Wisconsin? When I went to Wisconsin, these people up there thought I didn't know how to talk, okay? And nobody up there knew how to pronounce anything right, okay? So if you want to know how to pronounce things, listen to this podcast. This is how you talk, all right? But Wisconsin, I really enjoyed it there. I have not seen much of Wisconsin. I did. Oh, look at there, Daniel Sollenberger with his big old eyes. He is in the he's in the chat on YouTube Live. So hello, Daniel. I haven't seen much of Wisconsin. I've only been to Wisconsin Dells, which is a real touristy place, and it was in the wintertime. I did not get to see it when it was beautiful. But one thing I noticed about Wisconsin, which is really cool, is I don't know if all the roads are this way, and I'm sure somebody that knows more about archaeology, geology can answer this question for me. When I was there, the roads that I drove on had a pink tint to them. Down here we got black roads. They had pink roads up there. Now, not just like pink, but as you're driving in the daytime, you can look across the top of this road and it looks pink. And I'm like, why are these roads pink? And then, some of the places here in Georgia where we have drainage issues, they'll take big pieces of granite rock and they'll put it in the drains control the water. Well, up there, they were using these big pink rocks. What kind of rocks? Does anybody know what those rocks are called? So don't know if it was legal, but I took one of those pink rocks and I have it here in Georgia in my flower bed. I just thought it was kind of cool. But the rocks, a lot of the roads up there were pink. They had a pink hue to them in Wisconsin. Pretty cool. Let's see here. Now you've got the bandit asked a question. What's the difference between an eastern diamondback rattlesnake and a western diamondback rattlesnake, other than just the range they're found in? That's a good question, and I'll be glad to answer that. Now, the difference in a western diamondback rattlesnake and an eastern diamondback rattlesnake, they always say everything is bigger in Texas, right? Except when it comes to our rattlesnakes. Georgia has the largest rattlesnake in the world. Doesn't just live in Georgia, but we're going to claim it as our own. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake is the largest rattlesnake in the world. Gets bigger than the western diamondback rattlesnake. And there are physical differences. There are temperamental differences. I believe there's differences in the venom as well. When you look at the tail of a diamondback, a western diamondback, it kind of reminds like a raccoon's tail that has the rings on it, the black and white rings that are usually spaced out evenly. A lot of snakes have the black and white rings. Some of them are not spaced evenly and as perfectly as a western diamondback's tail is. The eastern diamondback doesn't have those clear black and white rings. The western diamondback's pattern is more muted, like more of a grayish color, and the eastern diamondback has more rich browns and blacks and yellows. It's prettier because it's just a better snake. The southeastern snakes. Now, I've actually got western diamondbacks that I own that we keep here. Now, I like to keep western diamondbacks specifically because if I ever get a call to film a movie or TV show that wants a rattlesnake that's going to rattle, I will usually try to use a species of rattlesnake that's a western species. From my experience, most of your eastern species of rattlesnakes, your eastern diamondbacks, your timber rattlesnakes, they don't rattle as fiercely or as quickly as some of your western species. Now, of course, if you catch an eastern diamondback, he's going to rattle like crazy. A timber rattlesnake will too. But after you have them in captivity for a while, it kind of calms down a little bit. They don't do it as much. But western diamondback rattlesnakes, I can always seem to get them to rattle. They seem to me a little bit more temperamental, quicker to strike sometimes, definitely quicker to rattle and rattle fiercely as opposed to the western diamondbacks. We had a call one time here in Georgia where the son stabbed the dad with a fork because he was fighting with the mom, and it was a whole thing. And that brought in law enforcement, which found out, oh, he's got illegal snakes he's not supposed to have. And so he went to jail for, domestic violence or whatever, and they bring me in to get the snakes. And so he had a pair of red diamond rattlesnakes, not red diamondbacks, but red diamond rattlesnakes. I believe they're from Baja, California, the little peninsula down there. Beautiful, beautiful snakes. He also had some albino western diamondbacks. But where he was keeping these snakes was in an old rabbit pen, just with like chicken wire, rabbit wire or something on it. And the pen was just on the ground with no bottom. It was just a wire pen sitting on the ground, and the snakes were just on the ground in this pen in his backyard in a neighborhood here in Georgia. Okay. How many? And it was a few. It was like 3 or 4 rattlesnakes. How many rattlesnakes were in there before that may have gotten out? I don't know. Hopefully none. But I had to go there and get those snakes, and they were definitely western diamondback rattlesnakes, and he was being charged with each one of these snakes. Now, the red diamond rattlesnakes, those look nothing like a snake in Georgia, okay? So he knew he's getting charged with those. But the western diamondbacks are albinos. So you can also get eastern diamondbacks that are albinos. So eastern diamondbacks are native, wildlife. Western diamondbacks are not native, wild animals. That means he gets charged with possession of these albino western diamondbacks. If they had been albino eastern diamondbacks, he would not be charged with it. So what does he do? He goes to his lawyer and says, hey, whoever they got saying that these are western diamondbacks don't know what they're talking about. These are eastern diamondbacks. They just happen to be albino, so you can't charge me with these. So the state comes back to me and says, hey, the guy is saying that you're mistaken. These are western diamondback rattlesnakes. Oh, no, these are easterns. They're not westerns. Which is it? So I had to write this long thing explaining to them the subtle differences in these snakes. And some of it even comes down to the angle of the stripe that's behind the eye as to which angle it goes down, and to differentiate these two snakes. But they were definitely westerns. And so I had to submit that to the state to explain why I call them westerns and not easterns. Let's see here. Austin Massey says, what is your favorite snake? My favorite snake is the Gaboon viper. That's what everybody says, oh, I love the Gaboon viper. They're so gorgeous, so pretty. Yes, I know they're pretty, but it is not my favorite snake, okay? I like Gaboons. They are beautiful, but it's not my favorite. My favorite snake in the entire world is the much more beautiful water moccasin, the cottonmouth. It is drab. It is sometimes just black or brown or olive green, or it doesn't have much of a pattern as an adult, and it's my favorite. You know why it's my favorite? Because of all the stories, most of them fake and made up, but all the stories that come along with this snake. So for me, it's the perfect snake to use to teach with, because there's more myths surrounding the cottonmouth, the water moccasin, than probably any other snake in America. That's my favorite snake. Okay, so I did not even get close to covering all the laws and all the stuff that goes on with snakes in Georgia and snakes in all the different states that you guys live in. But it's just amazing how each state is so different. So the video that I have coming out with the guy who gets bit by the cobra, and we have to get his green mamba and his other snakes, he's in a different state. So what happened with this guy, the state he lives in, you can legally have these animals, okay? The county he lives in, you cannot. Back in 1999, they said, if you want to have these exotic animals, snakes included, you have to have a license, and it has to be issued 1999 or before. And after 1999, we're not issuing any more licenses, so you can't get anything else. It's just a way to weed them out, so once the animal just dies off, you can't get any more. So this guy goes and gets these snakes and has them in his house, and I don't know what happened, but something happened. Somehow the state, or the county, because the state's okay with him having them, but the county he lived in found out he had them. They go to his house, and they said, you can't have these snakes in this county. It's illegal. So he says, okay, fine. I'll take them out of the county. I'll get rid of them, or either I'll keep them and just keep them in a different location in a different county somewhere else. So the county officials, law enforcement, escorted him out of the county with the snakes to make sure they were gone. They contacted me when this happened because he was thinking of giving the snakes to me, but then he found a place for them to go. Okay. Well, several months go by, and what does he do? He brings the snakes right back to his house as soon as the heat dies down, right? Brings the snakes right back. How did they find out that he brought the snakes back? Well, when he shows up at the hospital after being bit by his cobra. So we're going to be talking about some of that in the video. What do you think? Should you be able to have a cobra? Should you be able to have a pet mamba? You know, it's a question I get all the time. People ask me all the time, why would anybody want that? What are you going to do with it? Why would somebody want a pet cobra? I don't know why I'd want a pet cobra, but I do. Okay. Let me explain it this way. Is there anybody watching this video or listening to this podcast that you collect anything? Name anything that you collect. Let's see. Okay. Guns. Some of you hate guns. Some of you love guns. I love guns. So people who collect guns, what's their first gun? A BB gun? Then what? A 22? Maybe a 410, 30-30, then 12-gauge shotgun. Then maybe they get a bigger deer rifle of some sort. Then maybe they get maybe an AR-15 later. And if they really get into this, they'll start getting guns that have, higher firepower, shoot bigger ammo. And then they get into guns that are more expensive, harder to get because they're expensive. And now they've got buddies that have guns. And every time they get a new gun, hey, look at this new gun I just got. Man, how'd you afford it? That's an expensive gun right there. And then you get a gun that's not just expensive, but is rare. A gun that you just can't get. So then you show that to your buddies. How did you get that gun? You can't even get, where did you find that? I mean, that's impossible to get. And you've got one. How did you do it? Same thing with snakes. You get a common snake, a ball python or a corn snake or king snake, and then you get a bigger snake, a boa constrictor, a reticulated python, maybe an anaconda, and then you get a hot snake, a copperhead, then maybe a rattlesnake, then maybe a cobra, and then you get some expensive snakes. You'll get some really rare snakes, some snakes that even your snake friends have never heard of and don't know how you got it. So you one up your friends, and I'm assuming that's why a lot of people do it. That's probably not why everybody does it, but that's just my guess. So that's what I would think people do this kind of stuff. So anyway, these laws are different state by state, and you just never quite know what your neighbor might have in their house. Okay, so all right, so hopefully I've covered most of this. I'm going to be having that video come out on our YouTube channel, and hopefully tomorrow. I hope you guys check it out and watch it. And I hope the rain has not been too loud. I can hear it in my headset. I can hear the rain. If I can hear it in my headset, I know you guys can probably hear it. Hurricane Helene is upon us, and as we go through the night, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So all the people who are in the path of Helene, the ones down in Florida, the ones here in Georgia, the ones all the way up to Tennessee. I mean, even Alabama. I think North Carolina is under state of emergency as well. Maybe South Carolina. But everybody who's in the path of this, everybody who's going to be affected by this, we want to keep you in our prayers. And also the first responders that are having to work through this stuff. That doesn't just include, police officers, firemen, paramedics, EMTs. It also includes the people at the hospitals that are having to work through this. And also the linemen, all the people with Georgia Power here in Georgia, Southern Company, and all these other utility companies in Georgia, and all the other utility companies in the Southeast that are having to be on call to be away from their families out in this stuff right now working. Make sure you don't take the the roof over your head tonight that's not even leaking water. Don't take that for granted, because there's people out there in this stuff working to make your life easier. So guys, thank y'all so much for joining me tonight. And I am going to be back on our podcast next week for episode 6. And what is episode 6 going to be about? I have no idea. We're going to figure it out, though. So thank you guys for coming. Stay safe. Jesus loves you, and so do I. Thank you very much for joining me, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider leaving a 5-star review. That helps me so much in pushing this podcast out to even more people. I record every Thursday, so check back next week for a new episode of the SnakesAreUsTV podcast.